Joining us now via the phone is Senator Charles Grassley, Republican from Iowa. Senator Grassley's inquiry into whistleblower allegations of gun walking led to the congressional investigation into the Fast and Furious scandal. And Senator Grassley, thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, I'm glad to be with you. Thank you very much for your interest in Fast and Furious.
Well, in an 11th hour move, the White House exerted executive privilege over the Fast and Furious documents at the heart of the dispute between the House Oversight Committee and Attorney General Eric Holder. How do you view this maneuver by President Obama?
I view it as, number one, protection for Holder so that maybe there can't be a contempt citation in the House. And by the way, I hope it doesn't interfere with a contempt citation. And secondly, does this signal that maybe the White House and the President has an involvement with Fast and Furious that we've never known about it before, had some suspicion about? And also, I guess I'm very much surprised that this would be invoked at this point, because for 18 months, never once has one page of the 80,000 pages we think exists of documents we've requested has executive privilege ever been hinted. In fact, even at the end of our meeting with Holder last night, there were, up until that point, and at the end of the meeting, there was never one evidence that executive privilege would ever be cast onto this whole issue. So I wonder why. Is it because the president does have something to do with it? And I don't have any evidence of that, but it'd be the first time that I had any suspicion.
All right. So what is the possibility that the White House had knowledge of this? I mean, what do you think the chances are?
Well, the only thing I can say is it raises questions in my mind that maybe they knew more about Fast and Furious than they've ever wanted us to know, and that the documents that we requested might prove that, and it would be very harmful to the president. And an election year, they want to cover up until after the election.
We understand the Justice Department today retracted a second statement made to the Senate Judiciary Committee after Eric Holder claimed his predecessor was briefed about gun walking. The Justice Department retracted that statement and claimed that Holder inadvertently made that claim. What is the significance of this retraction, and should Eric Holder apologize to former Attorney General Mukasey?
Of course he should apologize, and I'm the guy that exposed the fact that Mukasey didn't or had been notified of it, and it was a well-thought-out program where guns were actually followed and kept track of very closely, and entirely different from Fast and Furious, which was basically a program that got out of control with the sale of 2,000 guns, and the guns weren't followed.
Despite Obama's executive privilege assertion, House Oversight Committee Chairman Darrell Issa is moving forward with his committee's vote to hold the Attorney General in contempt. If the committee votes for contempt, the measure would then have to go before the full House for approval. So let's talk about what happens next. If the full House finds Holder in contempt, the matter would then go before the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, who is an Obama appointee. Can Congress compel an executive branch official to prosecute the Attorney General?
No, you can't, because that's an executive responsibility under the court. But you would think that in so many instances where this has been done before, there has been the proper prosecution. You're talking about a misdemeanor and possibly up to a year of jail time. I would think it'd be very embarrassing to an attorney general to be caught in contempt when all we want is documents, and when you have a president that ran on a platform that he's going to be the most transparent of any president ever, and he ends up being less transparent than most presidents. And this is just one example of where they don't want the transparency of these documents being out, because there must be something that scares them about it and would be embarrassing to them.
Senator, do you think at some point you will get to see those documents?
Yeah, I think we'll get to see them after the election.
All right. Well, are there any other resources or tools available to members of Congress to force Eric Holder to step aside?
Only impeachment, as far as I know.
And is that a possibility at this point?
I don't think it's a possibility because it only takes a majority vote in the House of Representatives. That could be accomplished, but it takes a 2/3 vote of the Senate sitting as jurors to find a person guilty and to actually be found guilty of the impeachment charges. And I don't think that that's a realistic possibility.
Now, getting back to the White House executive privilege move, some are now debating the authorities of the executive and legislative branch as it relates to Fast and Furious. Are we headed for a constitutional crisis here?
You know, everybody says they want to avoid a constitutional crisis, but when you ask for documents in your constitutional responsibility of oversight to make sure the checks and balances of government work, and that's all the Congress is pursuing, and people take an oath to uphold the Constitution, I would think that they would be embarrassed that they're not abiding by the Constitution.
Senator, it's been reported that Speaker Boehner and GOP leadership didn't even want the contempt vote, or don't even want the contempt vote, because they see it as potentially damaging for Republicans in the general election, because it could be a distraction to the economy, poor job creation, and so on. How big of a concern is this among Republican leadership?
I don't think that anything should be embarrassing to any political party or any individual as long as you're following the Constitution, and that's all we're doing in this instance.
Senator, last question for you real quickly. Should we also now question the Justice Department's commitment to thoroughly investigate recent national security leaks?
Yes, and regardless of Fast and Furious, I think it's wise to question that based upon the fact that at least one of the two people that have been selected to do it are contributors to the presidential campaign.
Senator Charles Grassley, Republican from Iowa, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, glad to be with you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.